So now we learned a lot about Go routines and channels and how we can work with those channels. Now there's one last kind of concurrency related feature which I also want to introduce you to because it can also often be helpful when working with Go. And for that I'll go to that filemanager.go file. In there we have methods that work with the file system. We open a file, we then read from a file, and so on. And whenever you're doing that, you have to make sure that you also close that file once you're done, so that other operations can, for example, work on that file successfully. That's why I'm calling file close here if we have an error, and here right before we return. But calling this manually like this is not the best way of doing it, because you have to call it in multiple places, and it's of course easy to forget that you should call it. Therefore, the better way of closing the file is to use a special keyword that's built into Go. After this if check here, where I know that opening the file worked, you can use the defer keyword to defer the file close operation. So I still call file close here, but when executing a function with defer in front of it, Go will actually not execute this code right away, but instead only once the surrounding function or method, so in this case the readLines method, finished, either because of an error or because it's done. So Go will call file close for me at the right point of time. And that's of course great, because now we only have to call it once, so to say, and it will then be called for us. And therefore we should of course not just use it here in readLines, but also in writeResult. Once we know that we have a file, that we did not get an error, we should defer file close. And we should then get rid of these manual file close calls here. So defer is an important keyword whenever you have some operation, some function that must be called whenever the outer function is done, because then by using defer, you can make sure that you don't forget it in some place and that you don't have to call it manually in multiple places.